In this current year, we have this new phenomenon called alt games. Alt games basically mean games that don't really have gameplay but have something else to substitute it. The reason why we call this alt games is because they generally don't have a win or lose state, and they don't really use your typical health points or attacks, etc. They're using the power of interactivity in video games to express a certain story or message. After all, some stories would be much more interesting if you're actually in it, right? The types of these alt games vary. Some people consider visual novels to be not games at all. So I'm going to consider visual novels to be a part of the alt game. And there are tons of visual novels out there that are pretty damn good. Visual novels have a certain level of interactivity, and a lot of your decisions usually impact the route that you're going to take. But they also have gripping, engaging story for you to follow all the way to the end, and multiple routes for you to discover. There are also narrative-driven games in which the game is presented in a video game cutscene manner of some sort. While some interaction with the game's objects might result in your character commenting on it, the decisions that you make in the story don't really matter at all. You're just there to pick up some dialogues, and maybe some decisions matter, but for the most part, it's really not, because it's too expensive making animations of each character in every route. Then you have walking simulators where not only you don't have any input in the linear story, but most of the time you're not even a part of the story. You're just some girl or guy observing a more interesting story in the background. It's like figuring out the story of a play by picking up the trash that the actors left out. This is definitely not the case for all walking simulators, but a good portion of them certainly feel that way. And finally, point and click, which is basically a game that I'm going to show you in a bit. So in whatever place your alt game lands, I have a couple of common problems with these alt games. The first one would be the price. The price usually ranges from free, which is great, to even $20 for a game that basically doesn't have too much gameplay. Unless you're a legit big budget narrative driven game with multiple outcomes like Heavy Rain, anything above $20 is too much for alt games, especially when they can be finished for like 3 to 4 hours. My second problem would be quality. There needs to be a good reason why the gameplay had to be sacrificed in favor of telling a story. You're putting yourself in the position of being judged as an interactive medium, but if your story is garbage compared to the movies, I see no point in why you should stay as an interactive medium. And that is especially when the story can be told much better in a movie format instead of a video game format. Third one would be time. The amount of time required to finish a lot of alt games are usually pretty damn short. And finally, the alt game developers themselves. And I think the best way for me to illustrate this point is by telling you about this wonderful article. YouTube culture is turning kids against art games. Specifically, the types of alt games that I mentioned previously. The writer's game here is called Everything is Going to Be Okay, which is basically a point-and-click interactive zine. I knew about this game from JackSepticEye, so let's get into a quick rundown for what the game really is. Watching the 23-minute playthrough of this game leaves me with the impression that this game is a point-and-click acid trip. Not as weird as Pajama Sam, but it's still pretty freaking weird. There are multiple pages, and every page contains little scenarios that will give you different actions and ways to progress. Most of them would consist of questions being asked to you, statements about the existence of life, mostly gibberish to be honest, and sometimes the game breaks the boundaries like Doki Doki, the most interesting one being the game opening a browser to your Twitter. But it's okay, this isn't a horror setting at all. Everything is okay. The game just looks so surreal. To be perfectly honest, this is one of the most interesting games that I have encountered this year, but not for the reason that you might think. It's not really because of the game's merit, but because of other external reasons that provide more context to the abstract entities that this game has. The game developer of Eigtbo is basically a person who is misunderstood and tries to express herself through the medium of this game. This game is so jumbled and messed up, certain scenes are open to interpretation, and my interpretation is that this game is a representation of the game developer's damaged psyche mixed in with madness mantras. For example, this part early on.
Okay, I did. Apparently everything's okay. I've been impaled 2 times. I don't think it is!
No problem at all.
Well, if you say so.
This part over here.
Right, so I can seek answers. I depend on you for answers. Please help me. Oh my god, are you okay? I seek answers. Because you told me everything's going to be okay, so I'm just going to trust in that.
Okay.
Future is never enough. Oh! It saved this picture to my desktop. Optimism. Sometimes you have enough. And it said the future is never enough. What is going on? Oh my god, are you okay?
I'm completely in control of the situation. inspiration.
This part over here,
I'm here to support you. If you need a shoulder to cry on, just let me know.
I don't know who you are or what you are.
this part over here,
It's okay. You won't actually be releasing evil or anything if you finish this. I should know.
Okay. Games are art, and art is by nature free. Therefore, developers will never make money from their games. Oh god, it's the sad truth, isn't it? They're never gonna make anything out of this. They're just gonna slave away unless they put microtransactions after EA bullshit loot boxes and everything.
this part over here,
Okay.
Help me.
Okay, you're just gonna have to calm. Sir, calm down. Sir, calm down. Calm the fuck down. Okay, I can hear you. I know you want help, but shut.
Hey, thank you. I am famished, but I do not know what to eat. Food is complicated. Please help me assemble a meal. I haven't eaten in days.
this part over here,
You're lying to get attention.
No. I'm just very, very concerned. Yeah, I get attention.
Gross.
Gross.
I'm the god of an proof. I am out to either make it or break it. Determined to change this. Acts of desperation. Won't see me used anymore. I won't beg or be bullied. I won't suck it up or see it ruin me. This was a life lesson to set me free. I won't ever give up, so step aside. And because I have all the rest of my life, I know success will be mine. Sleepless nights or fruitlessly.
I mean, all of this kind of reminds me of this, or especially this. And if you think I'm stretching, let's just say that if this game is a work of art containing the jumbled mess of the developer's psyche, this article is a detailed explanation of it. And trust me, putting this article in contrast with the game is both creepy and hilarious at the same time, which is fitting for Eigtbo. Oh, and before we get to this article, an incredibly late shout out to Didi and not so late shout out to Troubled Adder for the pledges on Patreon. You guys are fantastic. My game Everything Is Going to Be Okay was included in Double Fine's Day of the Devs. Yay! I'm happy to get publicity for my game, and Double Fine's public event for indie developers in San Francisco looked like a great place for that. This is probably the first time outside of E3 that this game was shown to a more consumer-based gamer crowd. So this Madness Mantra game was shown in a more consumer-based gamer crowd, which is basically like showing Gone Home in the middle of a Tekken tournament. This event is surrounded by people without knowledge of art games or the discourse around them. Basically, people expecting games with goals and magic circles, and in some ways or the other, keeping up with the standards of game design. And you would be right, at least video games are crystal clear on who's the crazy one. But my game Everything Is Going to Be Okay isn't that sort of experience. It's an interactive zine based on the abstract life experiences about trauma, PTSD, and surviving difficult situations. By definition, it's interactive art that uses the game format as a way to convey these messages. It's not necessarily a game in the traditional sense. It's an interactive zine based on abstract life experiences about trauma, PTSD, and surviving difficult situations. They're so abstract, they're basically open to interpretation, and I interpret some of the scenes that I've shown earlier as you constantly reassuring yourself that everything is going to be okay, all through this madness mantra you call a video game. Then reality hits and turns out everything is not going to be okay. Oh, and I also forgot to mention in the itch.io page of this game, well, it has this to say.
It is a collection of life experiences, commentary on struggle, and oddly enough my own version of a power fantasy. I have come to think that we have a backwards idea of power and perception of strength. We always have, and I think this is a byproduct of a historically patriarchal system. From religion to politics to economics, power is viewed as how many people you can subjugate. Respect is how many people fear you because of your power. How you can get to what you want at the expense of others. How you are the biggest dog in the dog-eat-dog world that we have created for ourselves. Our popular entertainment has always drawn from this point of view. It's simply a fact. You use your power to hurt your enemies and eliminate them.
Well, isn't that interesting? I want other creators engineers that set out to make this stuff to be ready for it. It might not happen to you, it might be bad luck on my part, but just know it happens. I would hate to see people leaving alt games because they had bad experiences, so I decided not to make games anymore. There is a place for our games. We have a right to be here. We just have to work hard on also carving out the space and understanding it for them. Nobody is saying you don't have the right to be there. We're saying that your game is weird, unusual, creepy even, and that can invite many types of reactions. People's reactions and emotions are things that you cannot control. Unless you're a dictator. Or a yandere. The morning crowd, the press crowd, was pretty awesome. When the doors opened, the place got crowded really fast. People either really loved my game or didn't get it, which is expected. Around 2 in the afternoon, when people started to bring their kids, usually teens, things started to get kinda hostile. They were pretty rude, and it got kinda unbearable, so I had to leave the area. I stopped hanging around the booth after that. I mean, I get it. The game doesn't belong. Yes. They're kids. Things get hostile when kids are involved. That's why I love anime. It's an effective method of birth control. I do find it interesting that you stopped hanging around your own gaming booth just because you can't handle kids making fun of your game. Like, I don't know about you, but that's freaking pathetic. I occasionally came to make sure they didn't delete the game from the operating system of the show PC. It wasn't all like this, but it was enough to be hard. Are you implying that the kids are smart enough to uninstall the game from the OS? You're less making yourself to look like a victim and more making yourself look like an idiot. I point this out because the rude stuff was totally in line with how streamers and popular YouTubers talk about these games. What the fuck is this? What the hell? Weird ass game. Lol, acid. Ha ha. Who the hell would make this? You know, the default slew of mockery. This came mostly from younger people. Ah, so that's why the reactions that these kids have are in line with how streamers, gamers, and popular YouTubers react. You see, attributing people's reaction of the game to how YouTubers react to the game instead of your game's own weird, creepy, and unconventional design is like saying people close their noses off when you fart because they saw it on TV. No. That's just the natural reaction that people will give to your game. You can attribute this to the YouTubers as many times as you want, but that's just you shifting the blame and denying that your game is weird. I am starting to notice the correlation between people who develop alt games and people who have high levels of narcissism and entitlement. How would you expect kids to react with your game? Showering praise and complex meta-analysis of the distorted high-pitched voice that sounds like Cubase on helium? I'm not gonna deny that popular YouTubers can give a significant impact to what kids are doing these days, but you're really stretching their impact all so that you can have something to blame other than yourself.
I gotta blame somebody, otherwise it's all my fault. Fuck that.
It hit me how much influence streamers and YouTubers have on public opinion of these games, and this is really becoming a problem. I mean, I know it was before, but damn, we should start talking about this, and some constructive criticism should exist towards how streamers talk about these games. I feel like this is a kind of a pressure that's building and it's becoming unbearable. Okay, let's address those points. While it is true that certain YouTubers can have an influence in the public opinion, the effectiveness of it varies from YouTuber to YouTuber. The two biggest factors that determine this are what kind of opinions that they have and how they're presenting those opinions. If a YouTuber is playing Cuphead, for example, and the opinion is the YouTuber saying this game is hard, then yes, you are able to convince people because you showed the game and you showed how difficult the game can be. If a YouTuber is playing Doom and out of nowhere he said, "Guys, child pornography should be legal," that would certainly turn people off, wouldn't it? I think you're overestimating a YouTuber's influence towards his audiences. That or you just want to shift the blame into YouTubers instead of the game's weird and unusual nature, which is made a hell of a lot creepier when your personality is being taken into account. It's negatively impacting how people are able to talk about art games, or even be open to these more experimental interactive experiences. Screaming, "What the fuck?" and all the other standard jokes is not a good predominant attitude to propagate towards these games, or their creators. Okay, game developer, it seems to me that you're trying to examine why people are talking negatively about art games like yours. If you haven't considered the 4 points that I raised previously, then let me show you how you can negatively impact people's perception about you and your game. Making a game that is unconventional and weird, having children react to it like how anyone would react to it on their first viewing of this game, and then writing an entire article misattributing YouTubers and streamers in how kids negatively react to your game. Those things are enough to cause a negative perception towards you and your games. All I need to do is just show it. If you want people to have any sorts of positive or even neutral reaction, you wouldn't have written this article and ignored those kids. But by you shifting the blame and not recognizing that the nature of your game might have something to do with it, you have painted an image of you being irresponsible because you shift blames, weak because you let children affect you, and frankly entitled because you want people to react to you in a certain way. How would you expect these kids' reaction when they see your game? And most importantly, how are you going to change their reactions? It feels like I'm talking to a yandere who only accepts yes as an answer.
I think this also damages the medium because experimental creators should not be shunned or ridiculed like this.
Stop. Your entitlement is really showing here. Creators shouldn't be shunned or ridiculed by kids. Kids! How old are you, game dev?
We have a right to be here too. A lot
Stop. No one is saying that you don't have the right to be there. You absolutely do. The kids over there are not taking your rights away. The kids aren't taking your rights away. Oh my god, this is too funny. Imagine a bunch of kids taking your rights of developing games away. I really can't take you seriously after you mentioned that the people reacting negatively to your game are freaking children! You wrote an entire article crying of how children are reacting negatively to your game. And yes, I would classify this article as crying because you are basically demanding children to not mock you or your game. Mommy, Billy shouted poopy head!
A lot of thought goes into making these games the way they are. A lot of thought also goes into making them different. Philosophies, planning, putting the art together exactly the way it is, making sure it functions in an unexpected manner.
Look, I want to take you seriously. I don't want to mock you, but in every step and every way I interpret this article, it just cracks me up. If this is how you handle mockery from children, I can't imagine how you could handle mockeries from adults. Maybe you're gonna cry in the corner, chanting your madness mantra, growing mushrooms, and reassuring yourselves that everything is going to be okay.
Come on, Senpai, would you please stop growing mushrooms in other people's closets?
Do you see how this article just becomes a freaking origin story for the game?
We don't just throw a bunch of bullshit together and YOLO, although yes, we do that too, okay, guilty as charged, but still, this isn't really a game, it's art. It matters that it's different. We want it to be different.
Actually, I'll try to be nice. These people don't want to be laughed at, so let me try to explain in the nicest way possible. You are treating your work of art as if they're special. It is special for you, indeed. You put a lot of heart to it, you put a lot of work to it, but you're also presenting this work of art to someone else. And to them, this work of art isn't special. Tommy Wiseau might think that The Room is a brilliant masterpiece, but so many people clearly don't, or at least don't think of it the same way he did. An artist can express their art in however ways they want, but that doesn't mean that it will be understood by everyone. One of the most ignored components in self-expression is compassion, understanding, and empathy to the human emotion. A key in becoming a good artist is understanding the human emotion. What is the emotion that you want to convey? Do you feel sad? How are you going to convey this emotion to other people so that they can understand it? Artists have a lot of difficulties in expressing themselves and be understood. In fact, I would extend that sentiment to people in general. People have difficulties in expressing themselves and be understood for a lot of things in life. And it seems like this entire game is your desperate attempt to have someone understand you. But the game is nothing but a jumbled mess of unconnected statements and reassurances that everything is going to be okay. So you decided, you know what? Screw it. I will explain the entire game in this article. And you did. You did an excellent job. Because from this article, I know that you're an outrageous, weak, overly sensitive, and incredibly entitled individual. Now everything inside the game makes sense. The title of this game alone is a madness mantra that you chant to yourself. And the game is elaborating on that madness mantra even further. Which is why nobody knows what this game is supposed to be about, and kids mock you because the game is too confusing and abstract for them. You can take this game as a creepy observation of a damaged mind, but the same person you observe is intimidated by kids saying her game looks like an acid trip. I don't know if I'm supposed to be laughing or creeped out.
The popular dialogue around these games center pretty much on the basis that they shouldn't exist, and if they do, they exist to be laughed at.
Okay, so the developer of these alt games are now in a dilemma. If alt games exist, gamers are mocking them left and right to the point where these alt game devs feel like they shouldn't be making these games. They feel like it's pointless because there's going to be backlash and mockery, especially from children. Oh, let's not forget those evil children.
Streaming kinda comes off as publicly shaming them. It's not constructive at all.
The act of streaming this game is an act of public shaming. Yeah, your game is a representation of your damaged psyche and it looks like an acid trip. So of course people are going to mock it. Jesus Christ. This person is a borderline yandere who only takes yes for an answer and runs away from criticism by constantly shouting her madness mantra. You know, lady, get out of my head sounds more convincing. Eigtbo is just a torturous way of living your life. And get out of my head sounds like you won't be hanging around for that long.
I feel like if you're an event planner showing games like this to a totally consumer-oriented audience, you have to prepare for the audience of it. The setting and context has to be differentiated. You have to create a space that basically screams, these are art! Don't expect a traditional game. You have to make some kind of point that people have to be open-minded. Create a space that encourages respect.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that idea. You can build a place in which the area is reserved for alt games in general, but as you said yourself, the adults don't really have a problem with the game. I don't have a problem with the game. JackSepticEye doesn't have a problem with the game. The kids have a problem with the game. And should you really be concerned about their opinions? Well, you do by making this article of how kids are getting turned off of art games in general. Question: do you understand children? Do you understand how easily bored they are? Maybe try to learn how children think first before making an article crying about how kids don't find your game appealing. Or do you want them to react to your game with praise? Do you want to control children? Kind of sounds more and more disturbing as we get through this.
My point is that, wow, streamers and YouTubers have created a steadily growing culture when it's kosher and fun pastime to laugh at these type of games.
Honestly, the only thing that I'm laughing at right now is the fact that you made an entire article because a bunch of kids laughed at your game. That is just so stupid, I don't even know where to begin.
We should be aware that this is a problem, more than maybe we thought. I don't know what to do about that.
So you made this entire article to call out a problem and not give any possible solution for it? What about that safe space where you can advertise your game to the audiences in a way so that people don't mock you or ridicule you? But that's only going to make your game more and more niche, right?
I really would like to encourage some constructive criticism towards streamers and how they talk about these games.
Name me one streamer that talks negatively about this game, because JackSepticEye in that video is enjoying himself quite well. And he has like millions of subscribers.
Just because some famous guy with whatever million followers plays it, this isn't an honor or necessarily a good thing. It doesn't help sales or exposure.
Wow! You ungrateful bitch! Yes, it fucking is! I knew your game from JackSepticEye! And thanks to this article, I would love to watch JackSepticEye play this game more, because everything inside the game now makes a lot more sense. It's a representation of your damaged psyche that is filled with madness mantras. Actually, come to think of it, this game is free, so if you want to try it out, go ahead, link at the bottom. You can check it out. Just don't click a link that says, don't. Just don't do that. I warned you.
The last time one did that, I got a slew of hateful comments and email. It kind of hit me hard because this is also a personal game, and people will cater their attacks based on what they know I've been through.
Understatement of the year! This game isn't just a personal game. This game is your head. You know how we always have memories of events in random chunks, bits, and pieces instead of the whole thing? You know how as we enter our dreams every time we sleep, we're always transported into random places in random times at random circumstances? You know how sometimes when you don't really do anything, random bizarre imageries just pop up in your head in a short amount of time? This game is a representation of your damaged psyche, and in every bit and pieces of the memory chunks inside it, it represents not only the current state of your mind, not only the sort of issues and dilemmas that you're facing, but it also contains the madness mantra that you chant. One that you keep on chanting to make sure that your problems go away. Everything is going to be okay. I gotta say, this is one of the weirdest videos that I've ever made because I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be creeped out by how all of the game's imagery is a reflection of the game dev's damaged mind, or laugh because the game dev cried after kids mocked her. If I'm a nice guy, I would honestly advise you to talk with someone, but I'm not really a nice guy. So here's a clip of a kid insulting you. Try not to cry.
Why don't you go home and fuck your mother some more?